Good morning, church. The reading for today is Psalm 62, and you can find that on page 598 of the Pew Bibles. Truly, my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from Him. Truly, He is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I shall never be shaken. How long will you assault me? Would all of you throw me down this leaning wall, this tottering fence? Surely they intend to topple me from my lofty place. They take delight in lies. With their mouths they bless, with their hearts they curse. Yes, my soul, find rest in God. My hope comes from Him. Truly He is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress, I shall not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in Him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to Him, for God is our refuge. Surely the lowborn are but a breath, the highborn are but a lie. If weighed on a balance, they are nothing. Together they are only a breath. Do not trust in extortion or put vain hope in stolen goods. Though your riches increase, do not set your heart on them. One thing God has spoken, and two things I have heard. Power belongs to you, God, and with you, Lord, is unfailing love, and you reward everyone according to what they have done.
Morning, Christchurch. It's actually almost good afternoon. So, what Lyle didn't mention was he was really inspired in the outreach by a youth pastor that preached for over an hour and 10 minutes. And I've took that word to heart, and I'm sorry if you had lunch plans. It's almost 12. We should be done by like 2:30. So just, you can WhatsApp. I'm giving you a warning. Just if you've got people back home, turn down the oven. All right. So we're in for the long haul. Not really. Problem with being a youth pastor is I'm very used to doing short things. Sorry, guys. If you wanted something really long. Psalm 62, when Guy asked me to do Psalm 62, I had a look at it and thought, Psalm 62? Really? I mean, I wanted a famous psalm, Psalm 23, the Lord's my shepherd. Oh, that's a beautiful psalm. That is a gift to preach on. Really can minister pastorally out of Psalm 23. Or at least Psalm 121. I lift mine eyes up into the hills. Where does my help come from? That's a powerful psalm. There are songs and hymns written about that. But Psalm 62... So I was feeling a bit like, no, Guy, why Psalm 62? And then I was chatting to Yvonne Kane yesterday, and she said, well, Mike Skevington had preached on Psalm 61 last week. And then she said, well, Emma is going to preach on Psalm 63 next Sunday, and then Brenda van Staten on Psalm 64. So being super bright, I was like, okay, 62 is of 61, 62, 63. You're doing a series on Psalms from the 60s. Okay. And when I was looking at Psalm 62, I thought, this is such a messy psalm. I mean, I love the grand, the iconic psalms because they're beautiful, they're simple, but this one is all over the show. I don't know if you followed, as Andre was reading. It begins with, at least we know who it is. It's David. It begins with David, first few verses. It's like personal testimony about my soul finds rest in God alone. My salvation comes from Him. He alone is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I shall not be shaken. It's personal testimony. Lovely. And then he suddenly flips into lament. Woe is me, my enemies are after me, life is terrible, and he elaborates, and then he's back to kind of personal testimony, Again, verse 5, find rest, O my soul, in God alone. My hope comes from him. He goes on again, he alone is my rock. It's almost like a chorus. He's coming back to it. Personal testimony, then complexity of what life is like, and it's all messy, and it's all his enemies, and then back to personal testimony, and then he kind of just goes into another genre. Low-born men are but a breath. This is like now wisdom. I'm like, how on earth do I preach on this? We've got different things heading in different directions. And when I sat with this for a while, I thought, okay, actually, it's a messy psalm for messy life. Because I don't know how you're experiencing life. God be praised if you're in a good place and everything is simple, but so often life is messy. And when you dig into the context of this psalm, we don't know too much, but there's speculation that David is on the run. Well, that's not he's fleeing, he's got problems with enemies, but he's on the run because of King Saul. That's one idea. You know, King Saul with his outbursts and the like, and oftentimes trying to chase down David, and David is fleeing and he's hiding out, and that's not a good space to be. An enemy without. Another thought is that it's actually Absalom, his son, who's staging a coup, and there's a rebellion, and it's the enemy within. Either way, he's fleeing, and his life's a mess, and that's the life of a king who's got power, who's got agency. How much more for ordinary people who have little power and little agency, and life just is done to us. And in the midst of this, what's remarkable is David is able to give his personal testimony that the rock of his salvation is God. That he can seek refuge in God. In the middle of the mess, he's saying, yet I stand strong in God. And the refuge idea and the rock idea is all kind of wrapped up together. In those days, in ancient times, where are fortresses built? On high ground, on rocky places. In fact, if you can incorporate a cliff, you've got a natural wall. It's a great defense. So him using the language of refuge and fortress and rock, it's all tied up with him seeing in God a safe place. In the midst of mess, God is his safe place. And it's more, because when he talks about God being the rock of salvation, throughout the Hebrew scriptures, it's a theme that comes again and again and again. Not that God is simply a rock, but God is the rock. He is in the wilderness story, there is provision that comes from the rock. There's the water that comes from the rock. And then the prophets of old, I mean, you can find it in the language of the Psalms, but Samuel says this in 2 Samuel chapter 22, the Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation. He is my stronghold, my refuge, and my Savior. This is the same language that David is using. And it's beautiful and it's powerful, and it's a place of personal testimony, both for the prophets and for King David. And then you read about his lament. Okay, so we have his personal testimony, but his lament is, my enemies are against me. They're like a toppling wall. Everything's so fragile and uncertain, and these enemies are spreading lies. They're seeking his downfall, not only with physical threat, but rumor mongering and a PR campaign that is against him. You know, that's sort of toxic social media. Not that he had a problem with that, but whatever the equivalent was in his days. His enemies are working in many different ways against him, and he feels helpless in the face of it. How are you feeling? Are your enemies without? Are your enemies within? Is it in your workplace? Is it what's going on in society? Is it a physical threat? Is it a social media threat? Are you being undermined? Are there lies going around? Is it the gossip? I mean, you get a sense of his helplessness, but we connect with that because that can oftentimes be our sense. Life is messy. Parenting has taught me most about being helpless. I used to think I had agency and a lot of control and power, and I could reach for my dreams and that. And well, that's kind of a Western modern myth, I have to tell you. Most people in most ages have little agency in the space that they're in. And instead, like with parenting, wow. If only I could parent with hindsight going forwards, but looking backwards, already having learned the lessons. For example, my son didn't sleep through for the first 4 years of his life. That's a long time of like sleep deprivation. And it was only when my daughter was born that after about a year, we thought, hey, let's move my daughter into the same room as my son. And with that company of having 2 children in one room, my son slept through for the first time. 4 years in. I wasn't a very bright parent, obviously. But that sense of helplessness in the face of trying to figure out the crying all the time and the not sleeping through and reading books and then thinking, okay, that's no use. And there was a book at the time about sleep training. We tried that. It did not work. It might have made it worse. And if it wasn't sleep training, well, it's just the timing of some things with parenting. Now, I'm a minister, and Christmas Eve is a time when typically there's services, and then Christmas Day. My daughter, as a toddler, decided on Christmas Eve that was when she was going to climb up the security gate in our rectory, and once reaching the top, go skydiving without a parachute onto the tiles. And so my wife spent Christmas Eve in casualty while I was trying to run a service, showing like inner peace, or at least projecting an illusion of that. And every kind of life stage seems to have its own challenges and sense of helplessness that comes along with that. And I've recently been in that life stage where my son is learning to drive. Jesus, take the wheel. I mean, right now he's doing very well, but he started in November, and it's the clutch and accelerator combo, and I live in a place where just getting out the driveway, it's a hill start, and driving around when we're approaching places where I'm thinking, brake, I find myself like hitting the brake, and it's not there because I'm in the passenger seat, and it's like, Jesus, take the wheel. So I don't know what space you're in and how you're feeling about life. And maybe your cry right now is also, Jesus, take the wheel. But essentially, this psalm, which is a messy psalm about messy life, comes to the same conclusion. Because we have David give his personal testimony, then we give insight into his lament about how hard it is and how terrible it is. Then he comes back to personal testimony, but did you notice where he lands up in verse 8? Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. So he's got a personal testimony of God being his refuge. He puts out there how complicated his life is at the moment, and then he says, you know what? This is not just for me. It's for us. So if you are experiencing a messy life, if you are feeling that you've got enemies besetting you on the outside and the inside, if you feel things are out of control, David's word to us this morning is, God is our refuge, and we can seek him there. He then ends with what is typically termed as wisdom literature type thing. Low-born men are but a breath, the high-born are but a lie. This is like echoes of Ecclesiastes. And Ecclesiastes, if you've read it, is meaningless. Well, the refrain, everything is meaningless. The right has tried this in life. He's tried fame, he's tried glory, he's tried wealth, he's tried going it with knowledge, and meaningless, everything is meaningless. And then in the kind of closing chapter, he comes to the conclusion in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13, revere God and keep his instructions. What's it all about at the end of the day? Being faithful to God. And then David now closes off this psalm. One thing God has spoken, two things have I heard. That's like an echo of Proverbs. And one of my favorite passages from Proverbs is from Proverbs chapter 3 from verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. So he's wrapping up this psalm, drawing on and echoes of the wise people of old who are saying, in the midst of everything that goes on, trust God. In God we trust. Not the statement on a US dollar. It's the punchline of a psalm. And there's a link that is brought then between the rock of ages and the rock that is our refuge in the Hebrew scriptures and Jesus. Jesus himself, who is the Word made flesh, who's the Word among us, who is the living Word, he says, build on my teaching. Matthew chapter 7. Jesus says this, therefore everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, that's for Cape Townians, and the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fail, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. So Jesus is saying, build on my teaching, which is profound and is beautiful. Then Paul actually takes it to an altogether another level when he was writing to the church in Corinth, and he says this. He makes the link between the rock of old and the image of God being the rock and the rock that is found in the wilderness to Jesus. He says, for I do not want you to be ignorant of the fact, brothers and sisters, that our ancestors were all under the cloud, not the one on Table Mountain, and that they all passed through the sea. They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ. So the rock of our salvation is Jesus. And there's one last thing I want to bring into the sermon. And it's not apparent in the translations that we're familiar with, and that's in the Hebrew. Actually, every line, or the significant lines, begin with only. And so a literal translation reads like this. Only towards God is my soul silent. From him is my salvation. Only he is my rock and my salvation, my tower, and I'm not much moved. Only from his excellency they have consulted to drive away. They enjoy a lie. With their mouth they bless, and with their heart revile. Selah. Only for God be silent, O my soul. For from him is my hope. Only he is my rock and my salvation, my tower, and I'm not moved. Only God is my salvation and my honor, the rock of my strength. My refuge is in God. Trust him in at all times, O people. Pour forth from him your heart. God is a refuge for us. Selah. Only vanity are in the lowly, and a lie for the high. Imbalances to go up they want. They go up, they then vanity are lighter. Trust not in oppression, and in robbery become not vain. Wealth when it increases, set not the heart. Once God has spoken, twice I heard this, that strength is with God. So, a messy psalm for a messy life, and the message is this: only God. So what? Are you feeling like your life is messy? Are you feeling shaken? Are people trying to topple you? Some enemy without or an enemy within? Is someone taking delight in spreading lies about you? Hear the word of David. Find rest, O my soul, in God alone. My hope comes from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress, I shall not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is a mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart to him, for God is our refuge. And so as we come to the end of the service, there's a chance for prayer ministry. If you are wanting to get back on a sure foundation, if you are shaken and you're wanting certainty, if you are anxious and you're wanting peace, I would encourage you, don't rush off. Just stay behind. After the service, come up for prayer ministry. Reaffirm who your foundation is. Open yourself to the Holy Spirit to say, come Holy Spirit, give me that peace I need. I feel like I'm a toppling wall. I feel like life is messy. Lord, give me a center again. Give me a root. Give me the foundation. Give me the rock that is higher than I, that is Jesus.